for a job. In fact, I've made up my mind to find a career that I can learn and grow into. Who am I? I'm a hard worker. I set high goals, and I've been told that I'm persistent.
And I'm thinking, the television news might just be something I love, as well as something I happen to be good at.
Now, I know that today's work culture no longer caters to the job loyalty that could be promised to earlier generations. What I believe is that good things come to those who work their asses off. And that good people who reached the top of the mountain didn't just fall there. My motto is, if you want to win the lottery, you have to make the money to buy a ticket. You have to make the money to buy a ticket. You have to make the money to buy a ticket. You have to make the money to buy a ticket. You have to make the money to buy a ticket!
Welcome back to the Cinema Club podcast. My name is Christopher Amick, and I'll be your host for today's episode. The Cinema Club is like a book club, but for movies. Every episode, we invite one member of the Cinema Club to be the co-host for the episode who will choose a movie or television show and join Nick or I on the podcast to talk about that film or television show. Today, we are covering Nightcrawler, and I am joined by Adam Cheatham and Tyler Goodwin. Adam Cheatham is, of course, a familiar voice on the podcast. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Love talking movies.
Yeah. Absolutely. Then we also have Tyler Goodwin joining us. And Tyler, you and Adam have the podcast Filmthropology. So it's really cool to have the two hosts of a different movie podcast on the Cinema Club today. But Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on with you guys again. I've been on once before, and that was a lot of fun, but I think that was a few years ago. So I'm just very grateful and very elated to be back on and talk about Nightcrawler. Adam and I have been doing Filmthropology for a while now, off and on. We essentially talk about movies that had a specific effect on the world in one way or another. We have an episode about Bambi affecting deer population. We have an episode about Jaws affecting shark population, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of fun talking about film history and making our own somewhat irreverent and wholesome jokes. We're all over the place on that podcast, but yeah, absolutely. We have fun. I'm excited to get together today.
When we first started getting the episodes, it was really interesting to see how this form of entertainment could have a real world impact. I didn't expect that so many movies could have so much like material impact on the world. You know what I mean? I just viewed it as art and was like, oh, I like it, don't like it. But yeah, it's really cool.
No, it sounds like it. Dissecting a film, talking about how it's impacted various things on a global or societal level. I think that's pretty cool, honestly, and unique. With that being said, very happy to have both of you here. And yeah, I've been trying to get Tyler back on the podcast, record with me for a while. And Adam, we had talked previously about you choosing a film because you're on the podcast quite a bit, usually as one of the guests, but I was like, we got to get Adam back with a co-host episode. And one of the films you shared that you had an interest and a love for and in regard to diving into in detail today was Nightcrawler, which I was previously unfamiliar with, but now I've watched it twice in the last week. So I'm more familiar with it, but tell us a little bit about your love for the film.
So much to say. When the movie originally came out in 2014, I was working at a movie theater, actually. And admittedly, the initial draw to the film was the name because it's the name of my favorite X-Men. And then I remember posters started coming in And I saw a picture of Jake Gyllenhaal and he looked really creepy. And I was like, what is this film about? It was really interesting. I remember checking out the trailer and I could tell like Jake Gyllenhaal had the crazy performance. And I remember hyping myself up for that movie leading up to it. I remember watching it in the theater for free because I worked at the movie and I watched it multiple times. I love all movies, but Nightcrawler represents like a type of film that I'll cherish a lot. It's in the world of Hollywood, a fairly like low budget film, was very small scale in terms of what the story is. And it's a movie that's driven by its characters. It's really subtle. The music's also really good. There's reasonings. I don't want to get into it too much because I feel like it's more to talk about when we get to the certain moments. But really, Jake Gyllenhaal's performance and what the movie kind of represents is just a movie I'll recommend just for that alone. Would you say it fits in the more art house style? Would you consider that?
I think it definitely leans that way. I feel like it was hard to categorize. Definitely
hard.
has those noir elements. I was going to ask you too, Adam. You shared that the trailer really sold you on
Yeah.
this film.
Oof.
And I was looking up trailers to insert into the podcast, and there's about 3 different ones out there. Was it the trailer where it ends on that quote where he says, "You have to buy the ticket. You have to buy the ticket."
Yeah.
What a trailer. That is how you do a trailer. And I was
Yeah.
looking into that a little bit. I think in the actual film, they have him say that line at least once, but in the trailer, I think he says it at least 3 to 5 times. And I guess that was Gyllenhaal's idea. He was like, let's film me saying this line in just multiple different locations, and then you can throw it into a trailer. I thought that was super cool because it
Yeah.
totally sold me on this film, but also I think really gives us a good insight into Lou's character
It's so
as
much
well
to say about Lou.
in a minute and 30-second trailer.
Yeah.
And I am glad that you brought it up because it wasn't a film that I had seen before. I've always loved film, but I feel like I've really gotten into film a little bit more in the last 8 years, honestly. And so when it comes to releases outside of the last 8 years, it's sad to say, but I'm not fully caught up on those films. So when you bring a film like this that is 10 years old up, and I'm like, oh shit, I've heard of this film, but I have never actually sat down and watched it. It's great. And that's why I love the Cinema Club. I love doing this because I get to experience new films and then most of the time end up loving them and we get to deep dive into them. But what was your experience or history with the film, Tyler?
Very similar to Adam's. I didn't watch it at the time of original release, but for me, it was 2014, which I think is the year that Nightcrawler
Yeah.
came out. Yeah, 2014 was just an incredible year for film, period. Right? I'm watching Birdman. I'm going to
Oh.
check out Whiplash.
Hold on.
I was
Let
like-
me just say, I remember there was like a 2-week span where I watched Whiplash into Birdman. We had a little theater that was playing those types of movies. And just 1 week they were playing Whiplash, and the next week they were playing Birdman. And those 2 movies are legit like top 25 movies.
Isn't that crazy? I just can't believe the years for film. So my experience, my history with the film was similar to Adam's. I did watch it at this point 9 years ago and was definitely blown away by it. I'll be honest, I never watched it again, I don't think, after the first run through, but it did make an impression on me. And I went back and watched it again this past weekend. It really hit home for me again because I remember what the movie's about, but I forgot the metaphor, like really what the movie is saying. And then when you watch it back again in the political climate of today's times of 2024, and especially considering how everybody has very passionate but mixed feelings about media, it takes on an amplified meaning. You know what I mean?
Given today.
Yeah. Watching the film twice within 10 days. The first time watching the film, I was always trying to think the best of our main character.
Ooh, me too. First viewing, I had so much hope. Even from the start, I was like, yeah, he just stole all that and he's trying to sell it. And maybe we're at like the bottom and this is like a redemption arc of sorts. Maybe that is what's happening. Because I just feel like I have an optimistic brain. So even though I see our main character doing like bad things, maybe he can redeem himself by the end of this movie. And I remember that first viewing, I said that 5 times, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're at the end of the movie." I don't think I'm getting a redemption, actually.
I do think that's really one of the biggest pieces of genius that comes with this movie, and with Jake Gyllenhaal's performance and the casting of Jake Gyllenhaal in the role,
Yeah.
right? Because you have this guy who's incredibly likable in some ways, but also incredibly unlikable in other ways. And then by the end of the film, you come to realize
Ugh.
we've known who this dude was from the beginning, and he's not changing. Well, for it because Jake Gyllenhaal plays the role so well of this simple, nerdy sociopath.
Yeah, I think part of it too is as a viewer, or at least myself as a viewer, when he steals from the rail yard, attacks the security guard,
Yeah.
takes his watch, and then he goes to sell those materials at the scrapyard. Lou is presenting himself for a job to the foreman. And just the way in which he tries to market himself, even though it's plain as day that he just stole all this shit, it even was working on me a little bit. I was like, oh yeah, like he just is like a petty thief. Give the guy a chance to prove himself. But then we see how Lou pulls up to that car crash, sees the freelance photojournalists doing their thing, and instantly he seems hooked by the tragic event, that woman being pulled from the burning wreckage of that car. It seems this really clicked for him as not any kind of job, but something that Lou might enjoy. And yeah, so Lou gets a lowdown that we can sell that footage to local news stations. And then Lou gets inspired from that. And again, proves my thought process of, oh, he can better himself wrong. And Lou steals that expensive bicycle and pawns it off for a camcorder. And that's like the first
Yep.
15 minutes of the film.
At that point, were you turning on him at all? Or were you like,
I was
like,
rooting for him, honestly.
me too.
Chris, I was in the same boat as you. I was like, this guy's just down on his luck. Look at what he's forced to resort to. He's clearly smart. He can clearly communicate and be intellectual and is emotionally aware. Let's look at this shitty Toyota he has to drive. Give the guy a break. But what really interests me, and maybe we'll get into that, is the watch on the cop in that opening scene. He doesn't sell it, which is interesting to me. He doesn't try to sell it to the pawn shop. Maybe there's some, he keeps it because by the end of the film, he's a serial killer. He's keeping trophies throughout the film. And really, for me, it's interesting. A lot of the film is just about power.
Oh, yeah.
And just his weird Lewis way. Because you see this with the program director, you see that with the watch, you see this with the footage that he doesn't give, with him changing the vehicle he drives. Please.
Hadn't thought about that before, but I think you're onto something because as the film progresses, you're right. He, again, is marketing himself. He's building an image of himself, whether with the watch, with the car. These things start to add up. Even when he goes to interview people, he's like, oh, I got to get this shirt nice and ironed, looks semi-professional. He's very intentional about that. Even when he is pawning off that stolen bike, he pulls up his hair into a little knot, puts the shades on. That's an image thing again, playing the character of this biker guy. I wanted to touch on the subtle humor that I feel like this film really plays with very nicely. One of my favorite examples of this is when Lou steals the bike and he's haggling with the pawn shop owner, riding around the shop.
In and out of frame.
In and out of frame.
I know what you mean. I like that part. It is just a little funny, isn't it? Because he knows so many things about the bike and you don't want to expect that.
Right. He's keeping it very casual. He's like, oh, I'm just doing my thing, trying to sell this bike. Come on, man. Give me a deal.
I won the
laugh
Tour de
out
France on
loud.
this bike.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not laugh out loud stuff, but it's
It's like really subtle.
it's subtle humor
Yeah.
as it's semi-serious stuff going on throughout the whole film, which I appreciated.
For me, I've found that for a film to be really good, you have to, as the screenwriter, try to get out of a single genre or just a single vibe that you have for your film. You have to touch on as many human emotions as you can. You have to get a little humor, a little bittersweet, a little happy, And it's hard, especially when you do a film like this that is very dark. But I do think they did that very well, adding a little bit of humor in there, adding some light moments, which is hard to do in a film like this.
But was desperately needed. And needed those light moments.
I wanted to take a moment to thank our Cinema Club supporters. Your monthly contributions are appreciated and help keep the show running and growing, as it definitely does take a few software and editing subscriptions on Nick and I's end to create these episodes. If you love the show and would be interested in financially supporting the Cinema Club for even 99 cents a month, visit our website and click the Support This Podcast button. You can check that out at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/the Cinema Club. Let's jump back into the episode. After he gets the camcorder and the police radio scanner, he begins recording incidents. He's pulling up on people getting pulled over.
Just very consistent thing with Lou. Just complete disregard of boundaries. They don't exist in his brain. You have all this bad stuff going on, and obviously this is like one of his first scenes he comes on. And he's just right over the victim while people are trying to help. And obviously when you do that, the people helping WTF, get the fuck out of here. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's just, but one thing that's super consistent though, is even where he starts, where he has very little power as he grows in stature, he just does not care about boundaries, and he just keeps pushing.
Great point. And again, he's figuring it out. Like, Lou records the aftermath of that fatal carjacking, and then he sells that footage to KWLA6. The morning news director, Nina, tells him the station is especially interested in footage of graphic accidents and violent crime in affluent, predominantly white areas. Lou hires an assistant, Rick, a young homeless man desperate for money. To give his footage more impact, Lou tampers with crime scenes, in one case, moving a body to get a better camera angle. As Lou's work gains traction, he buys better equipment and, of course, a faster car, the Dodge Challenger. Something I wanted to touch on here was Nina talking about, oh, great work. This is awesome. Get some better equipment. And Lou's, oh, I really appreciate that feedback. Gore is what you're looking for. He's just straight up is hounding her. That's what you want. That's what I should bring you. And she's like dodging that at first.
Yeah.
And then she's, yeah, just bring me the graphic stuff. And he's perfect.
Cool. That's what I want to do.
And it's interesting. So you mentioned how just shameless he is in his pursuit of the top footage that's going to make him the most money. That is exactly where that metaphor, that analogy comes into play, right? Where we get that Nina and the people at Channel 6 are just as shameless. They're like, yeah, we want gory stuff in white neighborhoods. That's the whole analogy, really. And that's the shameful part, is he's found his niche in this industry because those are the same type of people, right?
I think the film does a nice job of making you reflect on those issues without being preachy.
There's a specific thing that I think is so cool. The scene where Lou moves the body to get a better shot. I don't know if you noticed the music playing.
Yes.
It's like super, almost uplifting type music while he's doing this like really heinous thing. And what I found out was that music is supposed to be going on in Lou's head. And even though he's doing this like really awful thing in his mind, he's getting the perfect shot. So this is him doing great things in his work. And I just think that's so cool because it's like subverts what's literally happening on the screen, but that's what's going on in his brain. This like really uplifting, I did it music. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very triumphant.
Yeah. And it's music that starts at the beginning of the movie and occurs two more times. And it always occurs at times where Lou is doing awful stuff. And I just love how the music subverts what's happening on the screen, because that's how his mind is envisioning all the awful stuff he's doing.
I watched it again, and I didn't go look at anyone else's critique or anything so that I could come in here and seem like I knew what I'm talking about. But in my mind, I was watching it, and the music really did throw me off, because I was like, that does not fit at all. And I'm glad you confirmed it, because in my mind, I was like, The only way this music works is if it's juxtaposed to the situation, because Lou is feeling himself so fucking hard. My man is on cloud nine, moving a body to get a better shot. That is the only way that this works.
Oh yeah, totally. I understood why he was doing what he did, because in photography, I don't do news coverage photography. I do more artistic photography, right? So I can move things around, position things differently. I'm not having to go in and record things as they are, partially because I love messing around and making the perfect shot. So as I'm viewing Lou getting his perfect shot, I was like, oh, I totally understand what he's doing, because he's getting the lighting just right. He's okay. If I come down this little ravine right here, boom, perfect shot. I was like, oh, it's super fucked up.
Checks out.
But I totally am like, oh, yeah. Like,
And I mean, it goes without saying that really that's how sociopathic Lou is, that these are all just props to him in his canvas.
yeah, Tyler, perfect example of just like how out of it Lou really is when it comes to the situations that he's documenting. We have the other really big story that he gets where he goes into the house, he's rearranging some stuff on the fridge. He's doing those kind of things subtly. So it's definitely a buildup to that moment. So it's not like I didn't totally anticipate him doing this eventually. When I was seeing him move the pictures and the magnets on the fridge for those shots he was getting previously, I was like, okay, yeah, he's messing with it, so it's going to go downhill. But next big news story he's covering, it's, oh shit, he's moving a whole body around. And then, of course, he's in ecstasy about the entire thing. I think that's one of the better done scenes in the entire film, to me, honestly.
There are just so many well-crafted scenes in this movie to get a point across at times, and then at other times just for that character development, right? Because we're going on a journey with Lou. He is our guide. He is the main character, and we don't know if we like him or not. We shouldn't, but we do sometimes. And then other times we're horrified, and so we can get let in on his mental state. And that's really the main plot, is how far is he willing to go? What limit, what boundary is he going to push next?
Shortly after that, he's pressuring Nina into a date.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Then it just, boom, on this date all of a sudden. It's, oh, okay, I guess she said yeah. And then he's telling her he knows how desperate she is for higher ratings on the show. He's threatening to terminate his business with Nina unless she has sex with him.
I hate to admit this, okay? This was the point I was like, huh, maybe Jake Gyllenhaal isn't a good guy. Maybe he's a bad guy.
Hey, wait a minute. That's mean.
I think you're the bad guy now. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it is very sinister, though. And he just springs out on her so fast. And then all of a sudden, Lou's turning down an offer to work for Joe. So something happened there, evidently. And then shortly after that, Joe beats him to an important plane crash story. And this kind of circles back. Nina's upset, obviously. And she's, hey, Lou, you got to get better footage and keep your end of the bargain, because you're not keeping your end up. She says something along the lines of, you need to get your ass out there and do whatever you got to do to get me good footage. Like 24 hours later, Lou sabotages Joe.
Man, yeah.
Yeah.
God. Recipes too.
We have that shot from Joe's perspective looking up as Lou is filming him.
Dude, I think he knew immediately.
Yeah.
This is a bad guy.
He underestimated what Lou would do, which I think a lot of people do, honestly, to their own detriment in this film. But yeah, I just really enjoyed that unspoken commentary on, oh, now you're the victim with the camera in your face being hauled into the ambulance.
Joe's character does act as a little bit of a foil to Lou. Joe is someone who does that for a profession as well. And he is a sleazy guy. He's serious about it. He wants to up his business and make the most money, and he's willing to film some horrendous things and is seemingly unfazed and can disassociate himself from it, which is a little vile, right? And that's the whole point. But that's where we see the difference in what is he willing to do? And again, like you said, Chris, that's social commentary to me, I think, in a way, because if we're going back to the main idea of the film, which is that analogy of these guys who film this stuff are no better than the media who feeds it to you, right? And so they're just trying to make a bigger buck. And at the end of the day, the people who are willing to go further and go dive deeper into the depths of hell for it are going to come out on top,
Unsettling.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah, the whole film is unsettling, honestly, when you reflect on it, both from those societal commentary aspects to even the character of Blue.
I was gonna ask because I feel like focused on the plot and kind of talked about Lou, but I want to hone in on the performance of Lou. I think this is so phenomenal that Jake was able to pull this off because as an actor, you are literally rehearsed, right? You have to know your lines, you have to present your lines as such, but you have to make it not feel rehearsed. He did a wonderful job of being this character that felt painfully rehearsed. Like when he says all these lines, clearly this is a character that's on computer and getting all this information to push himself forward. And what was really unsettling was all these like little one-liners that he had. I just hated how painfully forced it felt and rehearsed.
Yeah.
He sat in a mirror and he said this line like 100. And I felt that in his one delivery of it. I don't know if there's a magic trick, but he had legitimately soulless eyes throughout the entire movie. I don't know. Just looking at his eyes, it felt so cold, so uncaring. And that's impressive because I've seen him in other roles where his eyes did not look like that. It was just so much I could read just from the deadness in his eyes. You know what I mean? And that was just so crazy to me. And it is absolute garbage that he wasn't nominated for an Oscar that year. And he didn't even get nominated. And like, I don't know, there are some good people here. But is there like a limit on the amount of people they can nominate for Best Actor? Because like he wasn't even nominated. And you know what? Actually, I'm looking at these nominations. Benedict Cumberbatch, The Invitation Game, great movie, by the way.
That's right. That also came out that year. That was
We
a
could have
good year.
thrown him out, put Jake Gyllenhaal in. I think he should have won that. It was just an odd omission. I try not to care too much about what the Academy does, but like in that year, I remember because that was like prime movies for me. I like watched so many movies then. And it was just so obvious to me that not only would he be nominated, but like he was winning, but like just nothing.
Yeah, that is wild. Similar to you, Adam, like I thought Jake gave such a great performance in this film. I didn't even see him as an actor. I completely saw him as the character of Lou. And not even always in those crazy, so to speak, scenes. A lot of the times it was in those very dialogue heavy scenes where I was just glued to the TV because of the tense emotional conversations, like the one with Nina in the restaurant. That's a super intense conversation. And he just played that so well. And you just see him become, like we talked about, increasingly obsessed to the point where we're like, oh yeah, he is a psychopath. And his character is just so unsettling. And I think we're hinting at it a little bit, but it's if someone with no social skills, ton of online research on how to talk to people, which he did, but it still doesn't fully click for that individual mentally. And I don't know if it's like a antisocial personality disorder that's also maybe a part of things here. But for example, there's a scene in the film where I believe this kind of backs up my thought process on this. He's in his apartment, ironing his shirt for the interview he's going to have, and he's watching a comedy on TV. And he has a notebook with notes right there. And something funny happens, and he's sitting on the couch, turns to nobody, and he lets out this unhinged laugh.
Oh, dude, that was really unsettling scene.
And then it just cuts to a scene of him watering his plant.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and I wasn't on my initial viewing. It was on a later viewing when I saw that scene. I was like, oh, he's like rehearsing his laugh. That is so weird
You're not wrong. It is truly, Chris, you're probably right. That I'm sure some kind of antisocial personality disorder comes into play. I think that's apparent from other things he does, but he's such a salesman. That's really the most of what he does. He's a salesman who also does videography for news channels. He's just so detached. And again, it's that spectrum of sleaziness where he's willing to just put on a performance and fake it till he makes it and do whatever he can. How far are you willing to go? And it's just so weird. So like you guys mentioned, and I don't disagree, in the restaurant, that entire conversation he has with Nina is very intense, and that is also a real turning point for us. But the one that really gets me is when he gets the big moneymaker footage of the mansion shootout, when he walks through before the police get there, gets all the footage for the news station. And the second he has some real leverage,
He
man,
exerts it.
okay, he exerts the shit out of it, dude. Literally just demand after demand. Because right in the restaurant, it was like, okay, he's extorting her and is really just being incredibly assertive with the facts that he has on hand and devoid of any human feeling. But it just goes full throttle in the newsroom when it's just him and Nina talking. And what gets me is like the last thing he says, that he's like, I want you to do what I ask you to do in your apartment, Nina. And it's, oh, Jesus. It's like a salesman who is just a complete psychopath. Is the best way to explain his game.
Agreed.
Yeah, speaking of the triple homicide home invasion, I didn't anticipate that surprise. Whereas this is the route we're taking when it comes to building off of Lou's experiences at night, tracking down these stories so far. And of course, he records the gunman leaving that Cadillac Escalade and the victims in the house. And he's presenting that footage to the station with the perps edited out. And then I think it really is interesting. All the news staff are discussing there's no way that we can air this. This is super graphic. And there's a bunch of ethical and lawful things that we would have to dodge to put this out. But Nina is incredibly eager to break the story. And like you said, Tyler, Lou completely leverages everything he has in his grasp at this point. He tells her, this is how it's going to be from now on. This is how I want you to introduce my company, to introduce me to all the execs. I want more money, of course. So that's, again, huge power play. So I thought that was, from a viewer standpoint, a really nice way to take the story that Lou's on track with.
For sure. We don't understand why while it's happening. We're just waiting to see,
Right.
okay, where's this going? And then when we find out he didn't give them that footage, because in my mind, I'm thinking, that's crazy. That would totally sell. But he's just thinking in pure numbers. Not
How
thinking
can
in
I
any
maximize this
human-
situation?
Exactly. You're so right. How can I maximize profit based on this? Because you get more footage out of it, right? Because if you just give it all to them at one time, they're going to pay for it all at one time. But if you could spread it out, you make more money. And that's exactly what he does. And we don't find out until he's doing. We're like, okay, you didn't give the cops or the news station this footage. Why? He goes, looks at the license plate, finds them, and we're like, oh, okay, this is another piece of footage you're going to capture. Rick, I think, represents the parts of Lou that we like. Those are the parts that we can become attached to, right? Because Rick sees the same thing we see from time to time, which is like, okay, here's Lewis, a very knowledgeable, very driven, persistent, hardworking guy who is relentless in his pursuit of success and knowledge and power, but who has, like Rick, had the tough go of it, right? We're giving this guy the benefit of the doubt, and Rick himself is getting the benefit of the doubt from this new employer. So we're seeing this parallel between the two. We're like, okay, they haven't been the best situations. They're inconsistent. The type of dude you may not really trust all that well. And it's terrible. Lou really just goes with this guy because he knows he can take advantage of him. And that's the terrible part. It becomes part of the story, how any hope of redemption we had for Lou just gets obliterated. by the end. And I'm not going to spoil it. Chris, I want to give it back to you.
I don't feel like Lou, a half hour earlier, would have kept the murderers' identities secret and cut that out. Again, even after watching the film 2 times, that's me thinking the best of Lou at this point. And so I wanted to ask you, is this just who Lou is? Or do you think it is a downward spiral of his character?
Having watched the film probably around 6 or 7 times, I feel super confident this is just who Lou is. Just having watched the film so many times, you really look at it from the beginning. I don't think there's really any moments where he's like an actual nice, empathetic person. Like anything he does seems to be nice. There's an ulterior motive for it. Yeah, I think he just sucks. And the audience, I just think like by casting someone like Jake Gyllenhaal in your protagonist role,
Yeah.
you prime your audience to view him as a good guy. And I think that's what it is. That's our brain trying to force him into this box. But yeah, no, he just sucks.
I can't believe that. He was such a sweetheart in that Brokeback Mountain. I don't know what happened.
I love him in Prince of Persia.
That's the one that took down the Zodiac. I don't know what happened between now and then. I agree with Adam. To be honest, I agree with you in a way as well, Chris. 45 minutes prior to that, I feel like he wouldn't have kept the footage himself and gone with that course of action, only because he wouldn't have known that was the most profitable course of action to take. I think he probably would have taken the footage, sold the rest to the news team, and then took the other piece, actually, of the guys to the police, and then would have tried to negotiate a reward for it. That's what I feel would have happened.
So I will admit, I am playing a little bit with insider information here because I've watched interviews from the director/writer.
I'll say,
And I kind of know the development process of how this character was written. Before pen was to paper, the idea was created just because the director really liked the idea of stringers. And he was living in LA at the time, how that contributed to the news that was reported and how the news reporting affected the thoughts of people. And so that concept was really interesting to him. He wanted to start off with like kind of a good protagonist character at the beginning. And that slowly devolved into he wanted to make an anti-hero. And then that slowly devolved into wanting to make a movie about like psychopaths, which is what Lou is. So knowing
that, though.
but knowing that's also more of a reason why I feel that any point of the film or at every point of the film, he sucks. He is not good. He does not care about anyone close to him. All he cares about is himself and his personal gain. And he's doing anything and everything to make that happen.
No, it totally makes sense. And I think why I was bringing that question up is because I was, to be transparent, realizing as I was talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, downward spiral. And I'm like, he got me again. God damn it. So I appreciate that deep dive, Taylor and Adam. Of course, that night, Lou and Rick track down the driver, stake out the house, follow him and his partner to the more crowded public area, and then call the police and record the confrontation. What I feel like at this point, there's roughly 20, 25 minutes left in the film, and it's just nonstop from here on out until the end of the film. Because previous to the triple homicide home invasion, it's been a little snippet of building up his repertoire and he's getting better at his trade. But here we're like, okay, this is heading towards the finale.
Pretty slow pace for like the first 2/3.
So.
And I feel like the last third of the movie, it's just hits you in the face. And it's just so many things are happening so fast. And just a random thing, I just really appreciated how unpredictable everything was. I remember initially watching that movie, it's lost. Like, what are we going? What is happening? And I don't know. I love movies, especially in the kind of final act that can just leave me guessing and just like on the edge of my seat. And I literally don't know what's going to happen because it made the bigger things that happened more impactful because I was just like on the edge of my seat waiting to see what the heck was happening next.
Yeah, of course, we had, like you said, Adam, 2/3 of the earlier movie is a little bit slower pace, but as I shared earlier, I was still locked in just because of the
Hmm.
performances, even if it was just verbal exchanges occurring. But even Rick's kind of alarmed about what they're about to do. Again, we sprinkle some of that humor in.
Yeah. Or he asked for the raise.
Yeah. And then he's like, I could have asked for more, couldn't I?
Yes.
He's like,
Absolutely.
he's like, there's super sinister shit going down, but just sprinkles in that humor here and there, which I appreciate.
I think we've gone over everything that leads up to the
Yeah.
climax, which is when they go back after the culprits. It's really hard. That's when Rick realizes this guy is not just ballsy and inept when it comes to people, but he's actually crazy and not a good person.
He has no
Because they had
regard
that
for like life loss as
because
long as
throughout
he
the
gets
whole,
his shot.
and again, we've touched on that. It's like kind of sociopathic and psychopathic in a way, obviously, but that's not apparent to Rick because Rick is giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's okay. This is my employer. I want to do a good job, and obviously, Rick's standards of good job are different than Lou's standards of good job, especially for an unpaid intern.
He got $30 a night.
That's right. No, he raised it to did he?
75 or
I guess
whatever.
so. I guess so.
And
Yeah,
then, and then it was
I
like
did.
half of whatever they're gonna get.
But then when he's like leveraging more when they actually get there, he's no, I want this and this bullshit. And then throughout the movie, he's trying to make it known to Lou, you could just talk to me like a normal person. He's like, this and this. You don't get people. Just tell me, let's communicate. Rick is being reasonable and trying to be a reasonable person and do better against Lou's unbelievably high standards. But then when we get to that climax and he's like, you don't get people at all, man. And Lou is just straight up, yeah, have you ever thought that the thing is not that I don't get people, I just don't like them?
Yeah.
And he basically threatens him. He's retaliate in physical altercation, and it gets intense. And Rick is like, "Okay, I'm gonna get out of the car and go do this shit because this guy's gonna kill me." Apparently,
Spoiler alert. He still does.
oh Lou, crazy antics. That line in particular. Have you ever thought that's not that I don't get people, but I don't like them? Because
Don't like
obviously, like you said, he gets people. He researches people. He understands to understand human behavior because it's so foreign to him. And that's really what kind of makes me agree with you, Chris. Definitely some kind of antisocial personality
Oh,
disorder.
yeah. I think that line is
100%.
He's trying to
Mhm.
escalate it.
And then we have the whole police chase, which was freaking sick.
Yeah.
All that shit goes down. The gunman's revealed to be alive. He shoots Rick. And then, of course, as Rick is dying, Lou films him
When he does that, it makes me so mad.
because he
Dude,
tells him,
it's-
"Oh, I can't work with somebody that successfully extorted me. Is going to be
Even though I
withholding
do it all the
evidence."
time.
Exactly. And then, of course, Nina is awed by the chase footage and expresses her devotion to Lou. And we get that reveal that the home invasion was actually criminals breaking in to steal cocaine the homeowners were stashing.
Save that for the morning.
Yeah, let's really maximize this story's impact
Yeah.
right now.
We need some
Um,
good numbers for my job.
Exactly. And then we have detective interrogation. Lou fabricates that story about the men in the Escalades following him, and the
Mhm.
detective knows that he's lying. And then the film ends with Lou being very successful. He hires a team of interns to expand his business. And
Mhm.
I love that he says that he will not ask them to do anything he is unwilling to do himself.
Let's
And
go
then they
right
drive off into the night.
Yep. Perfect ending, I think, because it really wraps up the main idea of the film. And then going back to that last bit we see with Nina, it completes the analogy of, yeah, I won't ask you to do anything I'm unwilling to do. And it's very clear at this point, there is nothing he's unwilling to do. Right. So that is the very terrifying aspect.
Sucks for you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so again, we just see he's got interns, more people he's using Joe's idea, 2 vans splitting up. And we haven't talked about this at all, but they do play not necessarily with color when it comes to the look of the film, but they do play with light and shadow a little bit. If you notice in that last scene in particular, that he's getting interrogated, comes up with that story, and boom, he gets off scot-free. He walks out of the police station. The sun shines on him. He puts on those dark shades, walks across the street into the shadow.
Nice catch.
And we cut to that night where he's got his interns now. He's successful because he's willing to do whatever. Nina will also likewise be successful because she's willing to be degrading herself, the integrity of truth, and newscast, and what she is supposed to uphold as a journalist in
Yeah.
journalism, right? Because she'd rather entice fear for a lie, because she says, no, we don't want to run a drug deal gone wrong or whatever. It's much more salacious to run it as a piece of crime infiltrating an otherwise nice neighborhood.
Their paths were different, but I think Lou and Nina's motivation is personal gain, and they were willing to put themselves through whatever to get that personal gain.
And really put everyone else through whatever for their own personal gain. And it, again, brings the analogy back home, completes it, and just leaves us fucking depressed and terrified because the sleaziness won, and that's how you gain success, apparently.
I think most audience members can relate to wanting to climb the ladder, wanting to become number one in our job, in our office, in our field.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it makes at least me question a little bit. Oh, wait, am I a little crazy? Obviously, I'm not going to any lengths that our character Lou is here, I hope. But
Yeah.
it really, again, is a film that I appreciated, makes me reflect on a lot of different aspects. Even maybe rethink a little bit about sometimes how TV does get certain shots when covering some of the stories that they do. In college, I, for a brief time, was looking into journalism. So I took a couple journalism courses, and everything in this film definitely does not align whatsoever with anything that true journalism should be aiming to do. That goes without being said. But the messaging definitely is there where it makes you think, like, even Lou's sidekick, he's shaping him a little bit into that. I could have gotten more, gone farther, pushed more.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, especially in American society, that's always something that we see in successful people, or at least people that we view as successful, is what are you going to give up? What are you going to do to push yourself to rise above, so to speak? And I feel like Nightcrawler did a really nice job of that whole theme that the Joker film did, the we live in a society thing, because everything Lou did and accomplished was rewarded and encouraged by his industry and his world, as opposed to the Joker, where his life was so comically horrible, it's sometimes impossible to actually believe. And he was degraded and shunned. I felt like Nightcrawler and Lou's character specifically was shaped and written in a way where it reflected society on how sometimes those people do thrive.
For sure. It's really a depressing film when you think of it that way. And there's not really any other way to take it. That's the case. That's what they're trying to shine light on. To your point, persistence, drive, pursuit of knowledge, discipline. Those are admirable traits from a business standpoint. When you look at successful people, they have those traits, and we try to teach ourselves to have those traits so that we can be successful. And again, I think I do love this movie because it does a great job of showing the entire spectrum. Those are great traits to have, but when do we cross the line? When they're not redeeming. And I think it's when you move a dead body to get a good shot and extort someone for sex in exchange for good footage.
Yeah. Maybe I'm the bad.
Yeah. Sometimes you just catch yourself extorting somebody and you're like, am I a bad person? No.
I really did have a nice time with this film, honestly. And I know you mentioned that you found the ending depressing, which I definitely feel like it left me with some of that emotion as well. I also thought it was a refreshing take a little bit to see the villain thrive. And I would say that Lou is a couple steps past your average villain, but I really enjoyed that it was this very sinister character thriving and growing on the streets of LA.
And don't get me wrong, I don't want to be misunderstood. To me, it was a depressing ending, But I do think that's what makes it great.
Yeah.
Because it almost serves as a warning. Hey, wake up. This is what our society is doing. Maybe not quite, but it's definitely not good that we're rewarding this. And I agree with you. A lot of Hollywood endings can make a good film bad. And there are a few movies with the happy Hollywood ending that I hold in high regard. Godfather. Michael Corleone is full on, don't ask me about my business. Boom. Great fucking movie. And then there's a reason that Infinity War is better than Endgame to me.
I don't know,
You know,
man.
because we got to have the Empire Strikes Back ending. Where the bad guy
Endgame had
wins
the
sometimes.
Avengers Assemble line. I don't know.
You're not wrong.
I do like Infinity War more.
Because you don't expect it. Right. Because for me, that's again definitely what makes a film great is when it just keeps going and you don't know where it's going to go. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
certain
Oh, yeah.
films, you're like, all right, the good guy's going to win. We just don't know how. So it's fine. But no, in this one, we're like, okay, why didn't he give them the footage? And why are we doing this now? And those answers are revealed, but it's a slow burn. So I appreciate it for that aspect.
For me, I'm more basic. Okay. I don't, in the sense that, like, what I hope to get out of any art that I am consuming is for that art to make me feel things. And sometimes, rather than saying the Hollywood ending is universally kind of detracting from movies, if it's done right and it makes me feel overwhelmingly positive emotion, I can dig it. It's about how you execute everything and set the audience up. And then a Nightcrawler, I fucking was so mad. I get so mad. I'm like, I hate you. But the fact that it can get such a strong reaction out of me, I think demonstrates, in my mind, a good piece of art. But yeah,
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, Adam. This art made me feel something, and I had an experience with this art. Because that's at least where I kind of land with stuff. Where even if it is, let's say, the Disney ending, if I had a memorable experience, that's what I take out of a film, whether I enjoyed it or not. Typically, Nightcrawler does a great job of, I think, really setting things up, especially for those last 20 minutes to just rip through that ending where you're glued to your seat. And I always love when we have that kind of ending. But yeah, Nightcrawler as a whole, like I said, I watched it twice, like within the last 10 days, because I honestly think it was one of the better films I've watched for the first time in 2024. So I'm really happy, Adam, that you brought this one up. You were like, hey, man, it's perfect for the podcast. Let's do it.
what's really cool about it is how low of a budget it had.
Adam, should we play our guessing game on this podcast? Chris, do you mind? I don't
No,
know.
go for it.
I don't know how much of Filmthropology you've seen, but in almost every episode, we have some kind of guessing game where we will try to guess the budget of a film or how many sharks are killed each year.
I saw the shark clip. I saw that one.
It was close.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's funnier to just be hilariously off.
You might hit it right on the dot.
I might. You've done that several times. All right, Chris, Adam, you have the number. I think Chris should go first. He is the host here.
This includes Jake Gyllenhaal's contract, marketing, all of it.
That was
So,
having
like-
budget, right?
Is it like 80?
Okay, that is the number that you have said.
Okay.
Oh,
Higher.
we don't say if it's higher or lower?
Numbers.
Got you.
You're
And I
saying
don't want to
80.
give a reaction
I'm going to
to
go
the
with
number.
I'm not gonna lie, 100 million is relatively small these days.
Keep in mind,
You know,
2014.
You're right. I was
2014?
kind of thinking about
The movie was filmed in 2013.
Inflation
has
definitely is
hit
has
us in
less
the mouth
figures.
pretty hard.
I'm gonna say 57 million.
Okay, so if you want to guess again, you can. It is lower than both of those figures.
let me guess one more time then. 45.
Okay.
32.
Okay. So we're gonna say that is the last guess. It was $8.5 million.
Wow. That's
How
really
much
impressive.
did Jake Gyllenhaal?
I think no, he had to be over half the budget.
That's what I'm saying. 50% of that budget was just Jake Gyllenhaal.
That's why the cats were
That's
so
crazy.
small. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, $8.5 million, and you're able
Oh
to
my
make
God.
a movie that good.
Wow, I must have
That's-
spent like
insane.
half of that in the last 20 minutes of the film. That whole car chase.
Right. Yeah. The vehicles alone, all the vans and police cars, that's 10% of the budget. Right.
And do you know like what it made at the box office then?
Yeah. 50.3 million.
Okay, it's a good return
So,
on investment for sure.
oh yeah,
But still, it doesn't seem like it's a very well known film then. Just
right. It
came
was
out then.
pretty underwhelming, and like when you look at it from the budget to box office ratio, it did really well. But
Sure.
in the overall movie community, especially in that year, there were so many good movies that came out specifically in this year. It fell by the wayside, honestly, but it's a movie that always stuck with me. So I will not let this movie die.
I'm glad that Mark said something. Hey, when's Adam gonna pick a film? And I'm like, damn, yeah, I gotta ask Adam.
I'm also really glad you picked Nightcrawler, man, because like I said, I haven't seen it in 10 years. And I don't know why I wouldn't have expected you to pick it. It totally makes sense. And it seems like something you might be into.
It's just a super interesting movie with a main character that drives the whole film. Jake Gyllenhaal, I think this is his best role he's done. I love him. I think he's had so many iconic roles. I feel like this is his best role he's done, period. I feel like without him, without his performance, the movie suffers. But
Mhm.
because his performance was so good, it carries the film. I don't think I can emphasize that enough. There's obviously a lot of people that go into making a film and a lot of great elements from cinematography to the music to the writing. All of it's great, but I think it all falls on its face if the performance is dog shit. And thankfully, Jake kills it by channeling his inner psychopath.
This is a lot of fun. Thank you both again so much. I will catch you guys hopefully in the future on this podcast. But in the meantime, for everybody listening, go ahead and check out Adam and Tyler's podcast, Filmthropology.
Definitely. Thank you very much. If you
Yes.
guys into comedy, into history, into film, definitely check it out. Feel free to come to our Instagram or Facebook page and see some of our clips, get a feel things we talk about and the kind of comedic perspective that we take on it. And we'd love to have anyone who wants to listen join us. That'd be awesome.
Thank you, Adam, again so much for movie recommendation and co-hosting this one. Appreciate you, man.
Anytime.
And as we've had Adam on quite a bit, hopefully have you on again more regularly, Tyler, in the future.
Yeah, that would be great. I had a really great time with you guys today talking about it. And I just want to say thank you for having me. Seriously, I had an awesome time.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Cinema Club. If you would be interested in coming on the show in the future, please email us at thecinemaclubtcc@gmail.com. Also, if you have not yet already done so, I would encourage you to join the Cinema Club Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/thecinemaclubtcc, where we share what television series or films will be featured in upcoming episodes on the show. I'm sure you're listening to this episode on your preferred streaming platform, but I wanted to make you aware that you do have options. The Cinema Club is available on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and now YouTube as well at the Cinema Club Podcast. Please also consider giving the show a review on iTunes, as it does really help the show. And finally, we are completely supported by listeners like you. If you love the show, please consider visiting our website and clicking the Support This Podcast button. You can check that out at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/The Cinema Club. Your contribution of even 99 cents a month goes directly to maintaining and growing the Cinema Club podcast. Thank you so much to those of you who already financially do support the Cinema Club, and we will catch you on the next one.